Hi, I'm Precious Brady-Davis. Today on Everforward Radio, we're talking about my new book, I've Always Been Me.
3, 2, 1.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And my first question for you is, what is it like now? We're right on the tail end of, June was Pride Month. Well, here in Los Angeles, we're still kind of extending it a little bit further because of lockdown. We kind of missed a lot of holidays. Does this mean something totally different to you right now with, on the curtails of everything that you're going through and the book launch? Does it just fall differently for you this month, this year?
It's just so humbling. And for me, it feels like an extension of Pride Month, of that I've released my debut memoir. And for me, I think that pride is every day, and as a trans woman of color, I don't really have an option to not have pride. For me, like walking outside of my door, I think is an act of resilience and truth, and is an act of bravery. But yeah, this feels like a momentous moment in my life to have just released my memoir. And I love Pride Month. I just got to end Pride Month by being on stage, seeing Shaka Khan perform live, which was like a life moment. And I got to meet her afterwards. So yeah, I'm still celebrating Pride Month.
I saw that moment, and I could tell in the caption and just in the background you were ecstatic. How surreal was that moment for you? And it's looking like that's not the only surreal moment you're having now, being on tour and just experiencing life in a very, very exciting way. You're surrounding yourself with a lot of people that it seemed like you were looking up to your whole life. I saw you were even recording your audiobook in similar studios as Lady Gaga and Michael Jackson. I mean, just to be in the presence of so many great monumentous people has got to just like land a little bit differently now that you're right there alongside with them.
It is so surreal. And I talk about in my book, I've Always Been Me, I talk about what the song I'm Every Woman has meant to me. As a child, I walked a picnic table in my backyard, turned it into a stage. When I was a drag performer, I'm Every Woman was my signature number. And so to stand in the wings and to watch Shaka Khan sing I'm Every Woman, it just gave me such chills. And it was proof that I'm in the right place of where I am supposed to be. And it's so humbling, to record in the same studio that Lady Gaga and Michael Jackson did. Woo! I feel like I'm in the legendary lane anyway. That's what I do. But it just felt humbling and such an honor for me to be able to do that.
Can you take us back a little bit? Can you take us back to a piece of time, a period of time in your life when maybe this clarity wasn't so obvious? Can you take us back to when you maybe were just feeling perhaps uneasy or different in your skin, and you just knew that your life needed to change and you wanted it to change?
Yeah, I think about being a senior in high school. And so I was just off of performing in high school. I performed in musicals and I performed in choir. And I wasn't, the best student. I was an average student. And as seniors, there's college recruiters who come and they recruit, young people. But I wasn't one of those kids, who got.
Oh no!
I wasn't one of those kids who got like the recruiter visits.
Like,
just
thanks for showing up, but we're gonna pass for now, or participation.
I didn't even get that. I was never called down for colleges who I wasn't being scouted out for specific colleges, and but I did get the pass for a program called Anytown, which was a diversity camp that facilitated conversations with youth all over the city of Omaha. And I'll never forget what that meant to my life, because at that time, I had started to come into my sexual orientation, and I was greatly involved in my church. And I had disclosed that information to my pastor, and they told me that I needed to get delivered and that I needed to get saved, and that I wasn't gay, and that, was not God's will for my life. And so being a part of that group of Anytown, that diversity conversation, it changed the course of my life, just because I was so different.
Mm-hmm.
I was other, and I didn't know what the course of my life would take me. Higher education was not a conversation, that I was having growing up. And ultimately, that's what I went to study in college. I studied sociology, and I studied, queer performance, and got involved in social justice. And it really changed, the course of my life. And I think it shows like the importance of mentorship,
Oh, absolutely.
there was a guidance counselor, that saw potential in me.
Oh, sorry. I had to mute myself for a second. I had a cough there.
No worries.
So you had mentorship in this organization that I'm assuming you thought you were going to get out of the one you were coming from, and that was your church.
Absolutely.
Religion for me is a very curious thing in terms of belonging and acceptance. I'm originally from Virginia. I grew up in the Bible Belt, grew up Southern Baptist, and I know what it means to kind of grow up with that as your identity, not to put words in your mouth, but this is your community. This is who you belong to. This is who is supposed to accept you for 100% as you are and want the best for you. But then when you kind of realize what the best for you is, and perhaps that is not in alignment with that organization, did that cause you to crumble at all? Did that cause you to question your faith? I mean, for me, there was a little bit of friction when I was kind of stepping into adulthood, we'll say, and wanting certain things for my life, but still wanting to have that faith aspect, but in my way. Did you experience the same thing? Was it a hard separation, or what was going through your mind and your life at that time when they perhaps were not accepting you for who you wanted to be?
Absolutely, Chase. It was a long, arduous journey. There were many times in which I knelt before an altar and prayed for God to change me. And like you were talking about in Virginia, in Omaha, Pentecostal non-denominational faith is at the heart of the culture. And I was ingrained in the culture. I was being reared to be a great televangelist. That is what I thought I was going to be. I originally thought that I was going to be a preacher. I thought that I would be a minister of music. And that was the one goal for my life. Nothing outside of that. And it was so hard for me to not be affirmed because of one piece of my life. And I was very honest, with my youth pastor, and saying, I'm so struggling with this. And that's how I was saying, like, and that's how they called it, that I was struggling, with that. And I'll never forget, and I talk about this in the book, of them saying to me, this is your last chance. And for me, something didn't sit right with that, of the God that I learned about. It was not a God of last chances. The God that I learned about was a God of love. And that's when I decided to never turn back and to never come back. After I went to college, I said, I'm not going back to a community that doesn't affirm all parts of me. And even in college, as once I started college, I was still questioning, the multiple facets of my identity, of whether, God loved me. And once I came into alignment that I could be a person in the LGBTQ community and that I could still be spiritual, that opened up so many doors for my mental health and for my physical being. But it was a great challenge of so many years. And then ultimately, even to my transness, it is what took me so long to transition, because I connected my body to spirituality, to scripture. I thought that if I changed my body, that I would be out of alignment with what God was calling me to do, and feared, hell and damnation,
Oh, of
for my
course. Yeah.
soul.
You bring up a really important word in your journey of not only identity, but belonging and just who you are, and that's love. I think nothing more in this world matters more than love, and that means it in a few different ways. That means self-love, that means giving it, that means receiving it from people and to people that are deeply meaningful to us and are going to fulfill us, and us them. And so I'm curious, what was I guess the bigger struggle, or how did you know that you had love in your life? Was it first creating and exploring and solidifying the love for and with yourself? Was it with another person that was loving you for who you truly were and who you were becoming? And where does love fall with you now with the religious community, with your kind of interpretation now of God and the love that that he has for you?
I would first say that it was the self-love that I had for myself. This book is called I Have Always Been Me.
Mhm.
And that's the way that I've always navigated the world, that I've always left places better than I found them.
Mm.
I've always shown up with optimism. Optimism is one of the gifts that I have. And I do think that I had community along the way, that a reciprocal love was shown to me. I talk about in the book of like what theater did for me, of being a part of a community of folks who loved all parts of me, even the performative aspects of myself, because as a child, those were the parts of me that were policed. And so to be embraced in a theater community, that will forever be life-changing. And today I have the most beautiful unconditional love with my husband, Myles. We've been married for 5 years and we have a little daughter. Her name is Zayn. She's 18 months old, and I'm so happy. And I could have never envisioned the life that I have today.
I'm so happy to hear that, and it's definitely a beautiful family you've started now. And I can only imagine. I'm not a father yet. I'm not a parent yet. I can only imagine stepping into that role. It's what the age-old kind of concept that we are going to pour into our children and hope for them everything that we didn't have, and allow space and opportunity for them that wasn't made for us. Where are you in kind of that dynamic? It sounds like you have come such a long way, and I know that you have, from stepping into your identity, from stepping out and just creating a whole life for yourself, your truest self. Are you still kind of more going through that and kind of deciphering everything that you want to kind of deliver and transfer to your child? Or do you feel like you're standing firm now on this new mountaintop and you just know exactly what you want to create, this life you want to create for your child?
I'm standing firm on that mountaintop, on
Amazing.
on the life that I'm creating for Zayn.
Mm.
That's one of the reasons I wrote this book, that I didn't want to pass down the intergenerational trauma, that I inherited. And even, the last question that you asked me about coming to a resolution with God,
Mm.
of telling Zayn that God is in everything, and God loves everyone. God is the act of humanity, and how we treat each other. And so passing that down to Zayn, and this book really talks about the ways in which I did not have unconditional love. And I want Zayn to know that I will love her no matter what. And this life is about empowering her. and how Myles and I can create the best life for her, and we already have. I mean, she has everything. Listen, she has all of the toys.
I see it.
She has everything from the time she was very little. She has everything. I mean, she's definitely running the roost. I mean, she runs out to the living room. I mean, she's 18 months, grabs the remote, knows how to turn on the TV, and wants to watch Sesame Street. But yes, I think it was really about stopping cycles of trauma, you know, in terms of parenting. And I think one of the things in writing my book that I realized is people can't give you what they don't have.
Yes.
And I think coming to that realization, I think that was really healing for me.
I'm so glad to hear that. And what you hit on there is exactly what I am most hopeful for in the next generation in general, in my next generation. And that is this kind of awareness that I think we are having around trauma, around small T's, big T's, and just what that word means, how it falls on people differently, and how really, not to say that trauma is okay, but like the experience of it is okay in that it is a part of life experience. And this is a part of life experience that we are becoming aware of and disrupting, and not just allowing to be passed down generation after generation, and not just stuffing into a corner or under a rug. I am so hopeful for Zayn. I'm so hopeful for my future children and the next generation that they are going to have people like us to maybe not have all the answers, but at least we are posing questions and we are not just stuffing them down. And I want to just take a moment and just acknowledge our parents and the generation above us, because I do think in many, many ways they were doing what you're saying. You know, they're just doing the best that they can. They're doing the best that they can with the tools that they have. So I'm curious, Precious, what are some tools now that you have that you think your parents, the generation above you in that church community lacked, or maybe just didn't sharpen often enough, that you feel more empowered and just more ready to kind of usher in this next generation?
Whew. Can I just say, like, all that was like just so powerful, just like snaps.
Thank you. It's I mean, you brought it up and I would love to just explore it deeper. Thank you.
The first thing I want to say is centering mental health, of having mental clarity, going to therapy. Let's just start there. There is so much stigma about going to therapy. And when I was growing up, it was ingrained in me of what goes on in this house stays here. And that's the problem. You know, and people think that they need to deal with their issues themselves. And if they can't deal with it, that there's something wrong with them.
If you can't do it alone, then you're not strong enough. Exactly.
And that's pride. And I think we have to break down that pride and say, no, I'd rather see the strength of you go to get help for anything. And I think we all need various kinds of, support in our life. It's like cutting the grass. Like, you can't cut the grass without like a lawnmower. If you do, it will be extremely difficult and be more arduous.
I've been there. One small little odd job I had when I was a young soldier in the Army, I had the task of cutting the grass out front with scissors. And I can tell you, I would have preferred the lawnmower. That would have been much better.
Exactly. And that metaphor alone, it will take you much longer.
Yeah.
To get the task done. And for me, like, I'm not interested in perpetuating that. Like, I would rather like live in the authenticity of my truth and of my being, and having sound mental health. Also, I think we need to have more lines and more conversations across difference. We all don't have to believe the same thing, but we should have a mutual respect for one another. I think we need to increase acceptance across lines of difference.
Acceptance, that's a difficult one for a lot of people. And I speaking personally, I do think, and I've seen over the years, that this concept you're talking about of just thinking differently is becoming more, I guess, mainstream, is becoming more tolerable, it's becoming more, just more. And but it's one thing, right? It's one thing to say, okay, you can think one thing, I can think another thing, but it's that acceptance component that I personally still see a lot of room for improvement for. I think is like the next step. How would you how would you like to see acceptance look and feel? Like, where are you seeing acceptance look and feel right, and where do you see it needing the most room for improvement, you know, and kind of speaking as society as a whole right now?
I I I think that in particular, I think that the LGBTQ community has seen lots of great acceptance. That doesn't mean that there still isn't stigma and that there isn't, you know, room for improvement. But I was walking down a shopping corridor here in Chicago during Pride Month, and I was looking in the windows, and I feel like this also can be a double-edged sword,
Mm.
as well when it comes to visibility. But when I was looking at the windows of the stores, they all had pride campaigns. And I thought to myself, I can only imagine what that would have meant to little me
Oh,
of
yeah.
going to the mall and seeing all of these campaigns and clothing celebrating the LGBTQ community.
Yeah.
I think, you know, that can be a double-edged sword, right, with the tokenization piece. But for me, I was leaning into the power of the visibility piece of that. You know,
Because if
I
it's
think
visible, then it's real. And if it's real, then like how I must be real too.
exactly
Yeah.
when people, yes, exactly. When people see themselves reflected, they say, I can be that too.
Mm.
And that's the part about it that I think like inspires me. And I think that there are various denominations out there, you know, that are very inclusive and very, you know, supportive. And I think that there are a myriad of trans writers, you know, who are telling their stories. You know, like me writing this book, there are folks in Hollywood who are really in the driver's seat, driving narratives, folks like, Janet Mock, folks like Zachary Drucker, folks who are really centering the narrative on our authentic experience when it comes to trans folks and increasing the lines of acceptance.
Mm.
I think when folks see our stories, I think that we expand the continuum to folks.
Oh,
And I think
absolutely.
that the more folks who tell their stories, I think that we push progress forward.
I couldn't agree more. So well said. And as you were kind of talking about that storefront experience, it made me kind of think back to, over the years, I definitely think that my eyes and my head and my heart have become more and more and more open and accepting of a lot of things that this life has to offer. And I'm very, very appreciative of the early exposure that I had to a variety of walks of life. And in that, I mean, like I was saying earlier, I grew up in Southern Virginia, Southern Baptist, very, very, very small town, very kind of sheltered. Love my family, love my upbringing, but I wasn't going to be given a lot of opportunity for diversity in that environment. Let's just say that. And I'm very grateful for the decision that I made to kind of get out. And I joined the military right after high school. And in that experience, those 6 years of active duty, I was all over the world, saw people of all over the world, of every race, every color, every religion. And a lot of us were all together. And so I think a 17, 18-year-old self, that kind of passively opens your eyes up to diversity. It kind of puts you into the world of exposure immediately because you see all of these people, all different walks of life, but you're all walking together in the same direction, literally wearing the same uniform, the same mission. How, besides, maybe the military experience, how, Precious, would you recommend, or what do you think is a great way for people very early on, if they're not in a big city walking through and seeing a storefront celebrating Pride? how can they kind of introduce this exposure to different walks of life and diversity, so that from a young age or as soon as possible, they're just allowing opportunity for awareness to happen?
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I think that is noble, anyone who serves. In terms of someone who lives in a small community, first, I would say shine in the places that you can.
Mm,
Shine
mm,
in the places that you can. Be yourself. There will be a place that you will find that will accept you and love you. Get involved in community. Find a community that is affirmational. For me, I found it in theater. You know, when I was getting those messages of hate involved in my church, I was going right to school and hanging out with the theater kids. And I felt so affirmed in those spaces, and it kind of canceled it out. And I think that sometimes, and this is true for a lot of people, I think that college provides a great opportunity for young people to explore. But I think there are lots of support groups online. I think the Trevor Project does wonderful work for young people to find support. Miley Cyrus's Happy Hippie Foundation, they have support groups for young people to sign up online and to talk to each other. And I would say find your tribe, find your community. And I know it's not always safe. Shine in the places that you can, in whatever that looks like to you.
Shine in the places that you can. I love that. I love that. I think there's a person hearing that right now that really needs it. And it doesn't take much in complete darkness. And you may feel that you're in complete darkness in a world all alone. It just takes a tiny little bit of light to completely separate you from that darkness, a tiny little bit to just stand out. And so seek that. And that may just be you, but no matter where you are, just shine. And that's what we all need, right? We need somebody to hopefully be that first step, to be that first spark of light, because they're looking for it as well. Others are looking for it as well. That community is there, but perhaps it's necessary for your courage to happen first, right?
Absolutely. And that's why I wrote this book. This book, I've Always Been Me, is a testament of resilience. And there was times when I was writing this book that I was saying, this is me. Like even now, I was just watching a video this morning that my publisher made, and it just like brought me to tears of just seeing my life's journey, of realizing in places that I was the light and that I had to be the light. And sometimes we don't realize that we are the light, but it's important that you be the flame in those spaces, because you never know where that flame can go. Just don't let people put out your light.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if they want to learn more about it, they definitely need to dive into the book. And so speaking of, I want to ask a question for the person maybe who is hearing about you for the first time or wants to pick up this book. What advice could you pass on to them that is going to help them say the same thing, that this is me? What is maybe one or two pieces of information that you poured into the book that really helped you figure out or just stand firm in, this is me? Because that's sometimes easier said than done. The journey to finding,
Yes,
like we are saying earlier, loving us.
Absolutely.
What are these tangibles that you can pass on to somebody else right now looking for the same thing?
The first thing that I would say, I know it sounds so simple, but be you. Be you. And that's why the book is called I Have Always Been Me, because I have been the person that I am now my entire life, even when I didn't have a label. And the second thing I would say is to be fearless, to live life with audacity. And because when you make big choices, life has an opportunity to respond. And when I say to be fearless, I say be fearless. And I think sometimes when we're making big moves, we're scared that we're going to fail.
Oh, of course.
And you will.
Mm.
And you will. There will be times in which you fail, but there also will be times in which you will succeed. And in my life, I have no regrets. No regrets. And I feel that comparison is the thief of all joy. Sometimes we compare ourselves to others' experiences. And I want people to know that your journey is authentically your own. And especially, you know, when it comes to coming out, come out in your own time. Your journey is uniquely yours and will not mirror my experience whatsoever. But I want you to be able to celebrate and take ownership that that is your unique journey, and you have the right to celebrate that.
When you're describing that, I can only imagine the emotional roller coaster that goes through your head and your heart and in your life from that coming out process. And also going back to the religious aspect, anybody that deviates from, you know, maybe your religious belief or your religious community in that kind of struggle for identity and coming of age, I believe there's another word associated to that process, and that's something that a lot of us can relate to, and that's shame. Shame of what I'm doing is wrong. Shame of who I think that I am, or maybe I know that I am, but there's this dichotomy of truth and shame is something that I think is one of the hardest things to shake, and people cling to for years and years. What is your concept of shame around all of this, and how would you kind of help navigate somebody through shaking that off, so to speak? Because you're speaking the truth and helping us step into our truth, but shame, I think personally, is something that a lot of people just can't fling off for a lot of different reasons.
Shame is that thing that you have to talk to and say, fall off. Shame is that self-talk of, I am not that. It is a continual self-affirmation that you have to have with yourself of, I am not this shame. And I think fighting shame, it's a muscle that you have to build over time, because there was a time in my life that I would not have been able to share my story because there are shameful parts in it. And even in writing my book, there were places that I felt shame, but I felt were important. I felt there were lessons learned. I felt there were places where someone might gain strength from, because like we talked about earlier, people say, because I can be too. You know, there were moments of heavy shame, but I pushed through that for liberation, to create healing. It's about, shame is normally tied to fear. There is something in that shame that we are fearful of, something that is going to happen.
Repercussion. Yeah.
Exactly. There's like some kind of repercussion that will come from that shame. But we can't operate from a place of fear. I think that holds us back from experiencing life. And that's what this whole book is about. This book is about healing and not operating from a place of shame. And I think also, like, I am taking the power out of shame by speaking the truth. And I think we also that we can do that when we speak wholly and we disrobe truth of shame of its power.
Yes, I love that answer. Thank you so much for sharing that. When you were done with your book, I'm so curious, when the last word, the last sentence, the last period, close the cover, what emotion first ran through you? What experience, what memory, what was the thing that kind of rose to the top for you? Because that's such a huge accomplishment in writing a book, but also just the nature of what you're talking about for you and for countless other people that need this work right now?
Well, for starters, I had toyed with going to graduate school several years ago, and it just didn't happen because I got a really amazing job. It was another opportunity, of life opening itself up and me just going with it. I think I felt a great sense of accomplishment, of I was overjoyed. And
Mm.
I think something that kept hitting me upside the head was I'm the hero of my own story.
Ah, yes. Yeah. Hmm.
And we don't often talk about, that's not something that we talk about. Like, we often talk about others coming to save us, or we talk about the people in our folks who inspired us. And I think
That's
that
not
was
what the church taught us a lot either. You know?
exactly. Um, and also speaking from that aspect, the level of spirit
Mm.
that it took for me to write the book, to be in tune to myself, to see the places in which my spirit persevered. It was such a great
You are divine spirit. You are the Holy Spirit. We all are, absolutely. And especially in a process like this.
that's it right there, that we are all divine. And that is what I've always been me is about. That's what this book is about. And that's what I believe, that I believe that I am divinity and that I am a part of the divine feminine. That's it. That's it
Mm.
right there. But I think for me, what most resonated with me was that I was the hero of my own story. And I don't think we often talk about that enough. When you become your own hero.
Oftentimes, not to downplay anybody's struggle in life, but oftentimes when we are living in shame, when we are living in fear, when we're living in the dark, when we are living any other way other than we feel like we want to or should be living, we're often waiting for that hero, right? Um, but how powerful is it when we can realize that, hey, maybe we can be our own hero? In fact, we are. And so just go, be the light, like you said, and save yourself sometimes. It's easier said than done, of course, but like, I firmly believe we can and should always be our own hero first, for ourselves and for the example it can set for others to have that domino effect. Um, well, Precious, it's been incredible having you on. I know you are extremely busy today, and I want to give you a few minutes back to your day here before you roll on to the next one. But I think what you're talking about, your life journey, and in your new book here, just embodies completely these two words here behind me, ever forward, and the whole meaning of the show. And it's a phrase that was set before me by my late father years ago before he passed away from a terminal illness, and something that he instilled in me growing up of really be your own hero, shine in the darkness. Like, no matter what, you need to just take a step forward. And no matter what you are doing, if it is in the direction of being your own hero, if it is in the direction of your truth, there absolutely is no failure. But you are the only one that can judge that. You are the only one that can know if you took action or not, if you moved forward in life. So I ask this question to my guests all the time at the end. I'm curious, what does that mean to you? Precious, how do you say you would live a life ever forward? What does that mean to you?
Living life ever forward to me means forever being in transition. Transition is inevitable. And for me, I'm always changing, becoming anew. And that is the story of my life. And who knows what will come next? But I certainly know that it will be precious and it will be rooted in purpose and passion.
There's never a right or wrong answer. I thank you for your interpretation. It's been incredible having you on the show here today. And we're going to have all of your information in the book down in the show notes. But if somebody wants to just click off the episode right now and go somewhere, where can they connect with you? Where can they find you online? Where would you like them to go?
Yes, absolutely. I love Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram, Precious Brady-Davis. You can also check out my website, preciousbrady-davis.com. You can also follow me on Twitter, Ms. Precious Davis.
And I just want to say, you know, and another big thanks here. You are my first trans guest on the show, and this is a direction that I have been wanting to go for a while. I've just loved this journey of entrepreneurship and social media and podcasting and all the things, but I am just looking forward to expanding my horizons even more. Like I was saying earlier, like the Army did for me, now I have to do it for me. So thank you for being this person for me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Chase. Take care.
All right.